All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. This is one of those episodes that I've been looking forward to for a long time. As a matter of fact, I started thinking about this episode more than a year ago. That's right. I had a guest on. We were having a conversation. This guest was mentioned, and I have just been intrigued and honestly cyber stalking her ever since. She is a revolutionary. She is doing some amazing, amazing things for education and for kids. She is changing the way school looks because the world is changing. And I am just so stinking excited to have Karen Giuffre on with us today. Karen, thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedule to hang out with me and talk to all these listeners today.
Well, thanks for having me. I certainly appreciate the platform and I appreciate the introduction.
No,
Thanks.
absolutely. You're doing all the things that I think so many others wish they could be doing. So, but before we get to all of that, do you mind just unpacking who you are a little bit? Share as much of your history, your experience with listeners that might not know who you are, which is crazy if anybody doesn't know who you are. But if there, by happen chance, somebody doesn't know who you are, do you mind just explaining some of that for us?
Yeah, so I'm the founding director of Voyagers Community School in Eatontown, New Jersey. But before that, I'm a person, right? I born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I settled in New Jersey with my husband and now and three children. And so I'm a mom, and I'm just you could say a concerned citizen. I come to this education movement because of my children. So I was moved by my eldest, who is 10 years older than my next two children. So I had the grand opportunity to do it again, right? So often parents say, oh, if I could only do it again. Well, I'm a parent who, in a sense, did it again. So my eldest went to traditional schools, public schools, very excited, the first morning with the yellow school bus and attached to him with what bus he was getting on and so on and so forth, a big smile on his face. And here was this incredible, precocious, curious, risk-taking kid who over time became very doubtful, very angry, disengaged, just like lights were going off. These beautiful, bright blue eyes were dulling. And we tried everything. And I was that mom that was very involved in school. I was the room mom, I was the treasurer of the PTO, I was the president of the PTO. I did all those right things. And despite doing all those right things, something very wrong was going on in my son's life, and therefore in our life and in our home life, because he would come home frustrated, angry, lacking cooperation, and just bored out of his mind. So in the meanwhile, I have two more children, and they are at an age, when he's 13, they're 3, and I'm thinking about preschool and I'm thinking about education all over again. And I say to myself, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. There has to be if children are going to spend this amount of time in an institution, in a setting, and with other people, it has to be something engaging. It has to be something they want to do. It has to be something that grows their minds, their hearts, their spirits, not just the academic side of who they are. And so I went out searching, and I found this amazing school that went through, it's in Lincroft, New Jersey. It's called A Child's Place. And I didn't even know what I had found. Honestly, didn't know what I had found. But I found this school, and I could see that the kids were excited. And I could see the parents were excited. I could see when the kids came out of school that there was conversation, right? It wasn't that, how was school? It was fine. What'd you do? Nothing. There was so much more going on. And so I enrolled my children, and they were there for 4 years. Who went through first grade. They were there for 4 years. And I always say that I got as much of an education, if not more, than they did. Because the director of that school, Albert DeBella, was incredibly innovative, open-minded, and excited about education. Every day that she went through that threshold, she was there to serve the children. And she understood them as I understand them and have always understood them to be powerful, resourceful, and competent.
Mm.
It might be the most important thing I say in this interview, that children are powerful, resourceful, and competent. Because if you really break that down, if you really think about it, all they are little people. Granted, we have more wisdom and we have more experience than they do, and therefore we can facilitate, we can educate, we can support, we can love, we can care for them. But ultimately, they have to be heard, and they have to be brought to the table in ways that engage them. And that means understanding their curiosity, their innovative processing, their willingness to try and fail and try again. And we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, as this evolves, but that's who I am. So when people ultimately say, who are you? I'm a person who sees children as powerful, resourceful, and competent. And therefore I have a connection to them that requires me to step up, that requires me to I don't want to even say serve, but to be in collaboration with them.
It's powerful. And yes, we are going to dive into that because, before we started recording, we both said, we're taking notes, and you're taking notes, I'm taking notes. And I've already got half a page just with that brief introduction to who you are and what you're about and why you do what you do. But I want to offer a point of clarity from my lens. When you say children are powerful, resourceful, and competent, and then you went on to say adults tend to have more wisdom and more experience. And I would actually challenge the wisdom piece. And I would also argue that at times the experience is a detriment because that our experience tends to drive what we think everybody else needs to do. I would say adults are bigger, louder, and stronger. But that might be the extent of where our power ends.
It could be, but I do believe there are adults out there who have, when I say wisdom, I mean, so let me give you an example. So I'll have an educator say to me, well, that child does not speak to me respectfully. And my answer is always, are you expecting an adult? Are you expecting a child to come with the wisdom you have, with the skill that you have developed over years? Or is that an unfair expectation? If you just step back, and I've done this with children where I've said, what you're saying, I think is probably really important. The way you're saying it is making it hard for me to hear it. That's my problem, right? That's my issue that you have to help me with, because I want to hear you and understand you. So when I say, and I don't necessarily think that adults have more wisdom. I think they have more life experience.
There you go.
And what that could mean that they bring to the table the ability to be empathetic, to be understanding, and to bring out the best in the collaboration. Because children are beyond our imagination in terms of what they can imagine and how far they're willing to go. And yes, I think you have many, many wise souls, and it doesn't matter their age. Now I have some children that just blow my mind, that come into my office so that I interact with them. Oh my gosh, I have just, and by the way, I always say, we are all learners and teachers. So these children teach me, frankly, as much as I teach them, if not more.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So people listening right now are probably trying to connect some dots. They hear this story of a mom with 3 kids searching for a solution, searching for a school that will provide her kids with all of the things she thinks her kids deserve. You stumble upon a school that is doing some innovative things, that's inspiring your kids. And you begin to think, like I think a lot of parents, a lot of educators do, wow, if I could build my own school, I would. And I know that's a talk that literally teachers and administrators say all the time. When I build my own school, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. Yeah. But you did that. You took that idea, that belief, that dream, and made it manifest. Do you mind just taking me through that journey? Like, How does one go from, I want to build my own school if I could, to, wow, now you have this school that is the envy of people really internationally?
Yeah. Well, I think that the other thing that people should know is that I truly believe anything is possible. I lived my entire life walking through the world thinking anything is possible. I remember even as a child, I would think of something and I couldn't quite find it. And I'd say, well, it's happening somewhere. That was my answer when I would be totally frustrated that I couldn't find what I was looking for. It's happening somewhere, I'm sure it is. So therefore it could happen here. Anything is possible. So, and I've always been an educator in the sense that from a very young age, I was a dance teacher, I was a scout leader, all of these things at early ages. I'm one of these overachievers to some degree, so I have some overachieving history. But I've always been an educator, although very short period of time spent in a school system. So I did work in a public school up in Massachusetts. I taught 5th, 6th, and 8th grade social studies for a year. My room was the noisiest room of the school, the envy of many students, and the bane of most teachers. So I got to do some innovative and creative things there. And unfortunately, with tax cuts and so on and so forth, I was let go. And I never looked back at traditional school settings because I really wanted to do something bigger. And so I've always been an educator. So the idea of teaching was not foreign to me. I've always loved being with children. So that was the easy part. And I just didn't see an obstacle. So what happened was what started was I went to the director and said, let's grow the school. And I did that for a few years and I couldn't convince her. And so then I said, okay, I'll start a school. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just had a need, a desire, an interest. And people will say I started the school for my children, but the truth is I started the school for all children. I really did. Yes, my children were going to benefit from it, but it was really an idea that I had that was much bigger than my own kids. People used to take bets. Oh, when the last one graduates, she'll close it. Oh, when her nephew graduates, she'll close it. But it obviously hasn't closed. And they're well gone, all of them. So I decided that I would get a master's degree in education because I felt I needed the credentials, right? You need that credibility. So I went up to Goddard College in Vermont and I did a distance learning program. And I'll never forget, you create your own course of study. And so I had already written the vision statement for the school. I had really carved it out and worked hard on it. And so I brought it up there and I said, okay, here's the vision statement. My entire graduate work is going to be around research to fully understand progressive education and education as a delivery and schools in general. And I'm going to start a school. And my advisor said, well, you can't do that. You need a database, And we went back and forth and round and round. And I finally said, listen, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to pay for this education, or I'm going to take my money and I'm going to start a school. But I'm going to start school. So that's my goal. So I was fortunate that the chair of the department found me in the dining hall one day and said, what's the problem? And I said, well, here's my situation. And she took my yellow pad and said, okay, talk to me. And she started writing everything down. And she went to my advisor and she said, let this woman do what she wants to do. Wow. You're going to be blown away. And so I spent 18 months researching every form of education, particularly focused on progressive educators, theorists, and practitioners. I traveled the country. I went to schools and spent time in schools. I went to Europe and I spent time in Reggio Emilia schools. And I amassed an incredible volume of writing. It's I love to write and I love research. And so I just dug in. And by the end, I had written my thesis as the philosophical foundation for the school.
Wow.
And I actually started the school 3 months earlier than I thought it would. So I hadn't yet graduated, but I started the school because my children aged out of a Child's Place, and there was one other progressive school in our community. And so I sent them there, but I had some reluctance because their philosophy and mine were somewhat different. And as I went along, it became more and more evident to me that, not every progressive school is the same, fortunately, because their different kids need different things, right? And so I wound up taking my daughter out, and here we were sitting at the kitchen island, and I was homeschooling. And I thought, what in the world am I doing? I am not necessarily an advocate for homeschooling in isolation. This is crazy. And so I started Voyagers as a learning center. And 2 days a week, we gathered in a church community room and basement. And we had about 17 kids. The group grew probably to about I don't know, 37 kids. And we met Mondays and Wednesdays. We unloaded a whole van of stuff and we did hands-on, engaged, incredible experiential learning. And then we'd pack it all back into the van. And I'd hope that I didn't need the van for 2 days so I could unpack it again. And that's how Voyager started. Wow. So it just, and I never looked back. I just kept going forward. And what I needed to learn, I learned. And mostly, unfortunately, what I learned was about, politics and zoning and building codes and and finance and running nonprofit, and because it is ultimately a nonprofit school. It didn't start out that way, but we made it a nonprofit school. So it's been quite a ride.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And right now I think there's a lot of parents and educators that are really resonating with this, because there are a lot of parents that are doing school at home on their kitchen island with their kids right now saying, well, we have to do something different because this isn't working. And when their kids are back in school, they're now starting to think, wow, I had a glimpse of what it could be. How do I make it what I want it to be? And you ran with it. Can you now talk to us about Voyager School? What is it? What does it look like, feel like, sound like? I know it's infant, pre-K through 12th grade. I mean, you cover the full spectrum, but what is it that separates it? When we say a progressive school,
right?
What does that mean?
I think the most important thing for us to say is that it's a community school.
Yeah.
It's very important. So we started out as Voyager School, and very early on, we added the word community. So it became Voyager's Community School, because this school is based on relationships. It's based on creating an environment that we say is much more like a family than it is like a school. When you walk into our school, you immediately know you're in something different. You know this is a different experience that you're going to have, that your children are going to have. From the moment, first of all, we are now housed in an old school building. So in 2014, I purchased this building, derelict building, boarded up, a wreck, and had it renovated so that September of the next year we were in it. So in 5.5 months from start of construction to end of construction, we were in it. So outside, it looks like this formidable old, public school. You walk inside, and immediately you encounter pictures up around the walls of every child and every adult, board member, teacher, the dog. They were all up there, and everyone has an I am statement. Wow. So each one individually has an I am statement. And what we understand is that all those I ams, all of us, make a community together. Then there's something called a safe place agreement. We have an understanding that we accept each other, that we are kind, we're caring, we are listeners, and we take care of each other. So these are important core matters in an education system, in an education setting where you want the best out of everybody in it. Then they have to feel like they can speak freely, they can share their ideas, they can work collectively and collaboratively with others, they can work individually, they can be who they are. So that's at the core of our school. The other thing is, again, that children are powerful, resourceful, and competent, and that we are there to bring out the best in them. They are there bringing out the best in us. The approach is we don't disregard traditional academics. So we understand traditional academics, we understand core standards and things that children need to know, but we're asking why. So, you might say, okay, so fourth graders need to understand geography. So we start with the neighborhood. And every fourth grader, maybe across the country, does this topic in fourth grade. We say, why? Not why does everyone do it, but why that topic and why at that time? And how can we make that meaningful? So, most teachers seem to start with a lesson, right? And a map or something of that sort. We go out into the world. Let's go out. Let's walk the neighborhood. Let's meet our neighbors. Let's go speak to the police officers, the firemen, the town council, the shop owners, and maybe not in fourth grade, but first of all, we have mixed age groups. So there's never a fourth grade isolated, right? And maybe we'll do it again and again because there's deeper meaning in it. So we're asking, what's the big reason why? And then let's answer to that. Let's speak to that. And what do kids need to know? We do not believe that kids need to know, to state facts, and nice if they can, and if they can rely on it, great. They need to be good researchers. They need to articulate. They need to communicate, right? They need to be able to communicate. They need to read. They need to write. They need to calculate. They need to articulate. You'll hear that from us often. And then they need the bigger things, the more important things. Can they research? Can they ask questions? Can they listen for answers? Can they sort through the real and unreal? Can they think critically, systematically? Can they establish who they are, understand how they learn, how they move through the world? Can they be good citizens? Can they contribute? And all of what we're teaching helps them to get there. We're really generating the sort of the people of the world, the participants, the contributors, the collaborators, the innovators. I'll keep saying those words. And I know they're kind of buzzwords, so they bother me to say them, but there's no other way to say it. Yeah. I don't think there's any other way to say it.
As the boss of the school, I no other way to really say it. There's probably a lot of other ways to say it, but I'll just call you the boss. The person at the very top of the school, as you look down at the school, and again, hopefully you understand when I say look down, you're not looking down upon them, but you oversee. How do you determine whether or not your school is successful? Because you're introducing students to learning in a way that is fundamentally different than the K-12 counterparts outside of your school walls, where they're doing a lot of comparative scoring, summative assessments. They're looking at where student A falls compared to student B, and they're ranking schools and sorting schools and ranking and sorting students. But yet you're focused more on skills, aptitudes, and a lot of words that end in 8. So how do you determine whether or not you're meeting your goals, objectives, and whether you're ultimately finding success?
Yeah, so we do not give grades to our students until they get to high school. They never see a grade. We have student-driven parent-teacher student conferences. So the student runs the conference. We have narratives that are written by the teams. So first of all, I can name every child in my school. I know their parents, I know their siblings, I know something about them, as do the teachers. And we as a team know each other quite well. And we can sit together and we can talk about students collectively, groups of students and individual students. So we know our students, and our students know us in a way that they are willing to share in a more vulnerable way, I imagine. I know. And we can sit together and talk about their education. How's it going? What are your goals? We ask students all the time, what are your goals? We just had a meeting last night. We said, okay, we've got to go revisit goals. It's time to revisit goals with the kids. What did they accomplish? Where are they going next? Where do they want to go? I know that these kids are learning because of the vibrancy of the space, right? I walk in and and I kind of do that, let me take that look, let me see that whole picture. And I hear energy and I see excitement and I see smiles. And sometimes I see frustration and I see humanity. I see engagement. I see learning. When I see one kid teaching another kid, that's the best. That's the absolute best. I see a kid bringing something to a teacher. Let me show you this. Let me share this. I found this last night. I'm excited about this. Can I teach somebody else? Can I teach you? Can you add it to your teaching? So there's a form of engagement. These children communicate very well. In our school, our rule is adults listen 75% of the time, speak 25% of the time. Be comfortable with silence. Because when you're silent, you're gonna get sound.
Yeah.
Kids are gonna talk. And we call our teachers teacher researchers because you are constantly collecting data. So I was walking through the building the other day and the kids were coming in from outside and they were going into the cafeteria, multi-purpose room, which is also cafeteria, and they were sitting to eat. And all I did was I just stood back for a minute and I watched the dynamic. I wasn't watching the teacher. I didn't have a clipboard. I wasn't taking notes. I just watched the dynamic and then started to interact with kids and get a feel for what was going on and how they were feeling and what they were excited about. There was a lot of energy in the room. And those kinds of moments, those are the aha moments where you know something, and it's just, and some people say, well, it's just their transition to lunch. No, there's so much you can learn from that moment.
Right.
And later I revisited it with the teacher to see what she had heard and seen. And together we could say, interesting, I didn't see it that way. I didn't hear it that way, but because of your experience in life and my experience in life, we bring different perspectives to this. Now, what's the commonality and what is the benefit of this conversation to the children and to the environment? I know kids learning. There's no doubt about it. If nothing else, I hear from their parents how they go home excited, how they speak to their family members, at holidays, and how they interact in the world. And of course, they read, they write, they do math, they learn history, global studies, as we call it. They learn sign language and foreign languages. They do all the things. I mean, I think people think, oh, it's a progressive school and kids just go to school and they do whatever they want. No, it's it's a lot of work for everyone involved. If you think about it, when you ask kids to start participating in making decisions about their education, taking responsibility, that's a lot of work.
Right.
The guys, we don't give much homework. And some people say, well, why don't you, why my kids should have more homework? I'm like, do you understand how hard they work every day at school? They work very hard. We give homework when homework is needed. We give homework when work wasn't finished in school because they didn't apply themselves. And they give themselves homework because they want to learn more.
That's powerful. Speaking of the awareness and parents even asking, where's the homework? I'm wondering, and people listening might be making some connections to other schools they've heard about, the Ron Clark Academy down in Atlanta or High Tech High out in San Diego and your school. And inevitably, you have parents who bring their kids to your school just because it's different. They hear it's a different opportunity. They hear a buzz, but they don't quite know what it is once their kids are there. Do you get a lot of parents that are completely in shock or question and push back on the things that they signed their kids up for?
So in the beginning, when we started, what we were truly getting, we would get some parents who were knowledgeable and said, I'm choosing this for my child. But mostly we were getting families who were opting out. Yeah. So we always talk about this at school, the opt-in and the opt-out, right? So we have a lot of parents in the beginning who were opting out of traditional schools, whether public or private, and they were coming to us and they didn't know what we were, but they were just hopeful that we would provide something different for their kid who was not flourishing and in some cases was suffering in the spaces that they were in. Those parents needed a great deal of education. They really didn't know. And our process is pretty arduous. So some parents come, we have a conversation, then they visit, they tour the school, they spend some time in the classroom. We have lots more conversation. The child comes and spends 2 days in the classroom. So then there's more conversation. So you would think at the end they understand us, that we have a website chock full of information. So you think they would understand us, but saying it and living it, two very different things. Right. So we used to get a lot of pushback. And my job for many, many, many years was to say, no, we have a philosophical foundation. This is who we are. We're not going to change who we are. We can help you find another school. And there was some of that went on. Now, as we have become more of a mainstay in the community, as frankly, the conversation about education has shifted, and parents have become now more aware of what's going on for their children because they're sitting with them at home while they're learning remotely from their school settings. There's more, I think there's increasing curiosity and understanding. So that's an interesting evolution, but we've always been who we are.
And you're at this place now where, yes, you are a community school, but you are helping educators really across the country and around the world. I can only imagine now that you have parents reaching out to you, looking for support from places outside of New Jersey, saying, help me. So what is next? How do you take this community school model and help amplify that elsewhere?
Yeah. So we have, I will regularly get calls from parents who say, I want to start a school. How do I start a
Yeah.
school? Or I'm starting a school, or, and I will offer as much help as I can in that movement, assuming that the school they want to start puts children first. Right. So I'm not interested in engaging and helping people start schools where the adults are making all the decisions. So I make that clear right from the beginning, but I will give advice and I will help adults to do this, to start schools. I sometimes hear from students, not as regularly, but I sometimes hear from students who feel stuck and have found the school and will ask what could I do? How do I, and I might get involved in that to some degree. But now what we're doing is we're really trying to expand our reach. So Voyagers now is not just the brick and mortar school in Eatontown, New Jersey, but it's an approach, a philosophy, a design that we're applying to more virtual experiences. So we've started Voyagers Global, and we are teaching children who are at a distance. We've started, we're soon to launch something called At-Home Learning, which is a platform, a learning management system where students can log in, and it's supplemental to their education, but also I think teachers will log in and use it. So that's an interesting thing. We've started something called We Teach Learning Studios, and that's a space where children who are now virtual for all or part of their traditional education in public schools and private schools come to us on their quote days off. So those days where they can't be in school, but they must log in remotely, they come to us. And that is so much fun because we have learning coach. She's there with them. She helps them to make sure they get on and they log in and they do their work, but she'll supplement their work with things to help them get excited about content. And when they're not doing that, what's even more fun is they're outdoors. Our students are outdoors 2 hours a day, out in the woods and wilderness. And so we take them with us and they're outdoors and they're in the streams and they're watching nature and playing games, and then they can play in the yard. And we also introduce them to STEAM and technology equipment and concepts. So those kids go home quite excited while their peers were sitting in the house with, the parents struggling or having hired a nanny or grandma and grandpa filling in, or, everything that parents have done to try and keep their kids, online, fulfilling this requirement of being educated.
Everything you're saying, I think just makes so much sense. Number one, like it's just, you think about the way that kids learn, the things that kids want, the things that help support adults and adult life and what's going to set kids up for success in that adult world. Why do you feel like other schools don't embrace what you're doing? Why doesn't this become the norm?
It's such a big question. My first reaction is, do they care? But that makes me really sad.
Yeah.
Do they care? Do they know?
Yeah.
Do they know that children are powerful, resourceful, and competent? We've set up this system. When I started this, people would say to me, why don't you just go teach in a public school? You could make a difference. And my thought was, I cannot move that mountain. I cannot move that mountain. And to move that mountain, you would have to move up in the hierarchy. And then you would just be part of the system. You would have fallen in line because that's your mode of survival. You said everything is about data. We measure it, we rank it, we rank the kids, we rank the teachers, we rank the schools, we rank the districts. There's no heart in that. Now, I don't want to say there's no heart in the classroom. There are amazing educators. I've met them, I've heard from them, and there are those subversive educators who are doing things so creatively in their classrooms, despite the limitations that happen outside of their door. But we have a turnover in education that's really troubling, right? And we're practically giving away certifications now to fill classrooms. What I
Enough said. No, I get it, and I hear you. There are some amazing people out there that have the same heart and the same drive to do the same things that you are. But then we have system with capital S and organizations with the big O that have to start listening to the voices within instead of driving. It's like me when I'm going on a road trip with my kids and I've got 4 kids in the minivan with me. I can tune out the sound and turn on the podcast and just go, or I can listen to them and make the stops at Dinosaur World and make the drive part of the journey, make it part of the trip, as opposed to just racing to get to the destination. I feel like sometimes in systems, capital S, organizations, capital O, we're so focused on where we want to go, we forget about the people in the van with us, and where we want to go has no bearing on the kids in the car with me. I'm driving to work as opposed to driving where they need to go. So
right. It's a really great analogy. I love it. I absolutely love it. And thinking about how you get there, right?
Yeah.
So you can go the highway or you can go all the back roads.
That's right. That's right. I can
That's a
drive
good
through the night
analogy.
with them sleeping in the back and surprise, here we are, or I can just make it part of the ride. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is next for you, Karen? What's brewing? I know you mentioned a lot of things happening with Voyager and the brand really
Yes.
taking off and meeting the needs of so many people. Is that what's driving you right now?
That's what's driving me right now. That and the idea that I really would like to get out on the road. I'd like to be speaking more. I'd like to have a broader audience. It's part of the reason I'm doing podcasts now, because I really want to reach out. I really want to, frankly, I want a stage and a mic. I want to be able to talk to more people and have more people question me.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to agree with me, but I love that dissonance. I love that conversation. So that's my personal interest is an education revolution. You know, I moderate Disrupt Ed today on Twitter, and I love that. And there's about 23,000 followers, and you know, I get some conversation, lots of educators, so I get to see really great work that educators are doing, and then just you know, trying to get the word out, trying to create 130 years of the same thing. That's what we've done, and that's what we're doing. I don't want it to be 131, let alone 150. 160, right? So disrupting education is really my passion, creating revolutions in education and evolutions in education. And then, yes, Voyagers is a brand at this point with lots of different, in a sense, products to reach as many children and families as we can reach.
Good.
So that's it. Those are
All
the
right.
2 things.
All right, Karen. So I'm in a second, I'm gonna give you that opportunity to take that microphone. And we're going to pretend that you are on a stage, because there is nothing better for refining your voice and your purpose than having that stage and knowing that you have an audience for a set amount of time. And this is your opportunity to sell a message, to deliver something powerful that could be life-changing, inspiring, destiny-shaping. And there's also nothing better than after you're done, having those conversations with a line of people that want to push back and helping you refine your thinking, because there are people that will push back, and it helps shape you. It helps refine you and helps grow you and make you better.
Yeah.
But right now you've got a captive audience. You have people that are either laying in bed, getting ready to fall asleep. They're driving in their car to the grocery store. Maybe they're in their classrooms right now, prepping for the day or wrapping up for the day. And they're listening to your words and they're saying, I want that. Or that there was just so much that you just shared. Pretend that you're on the stage with them. The clock is ticked down. It's a TED Talk, and you've reached your 16-minute max. Microphone in hand. You're just about to walk off the stage. What is your mic drop moment? What is that thing you want to leave people with? And then drop the mic, walk off, and just let them sit and stir for a minute.
Yeah. So if you approach the world without seeing children as powerful, resourceful, and competent, if you approach the world by thinking that you know it all and they're there just for you to pour the information in, imagine the emptiness of that. Imagine the emptiness of that. Imagine what you lose in that relationship and what they lose in that relationship, and therefore what they bring into the world. Versus walking into a space where you see every child as an opportunity, every child as a contributor, every child as, again, powerful, resourceful, and competent. And you open your heart and your mind to that. You open your spirit to that.
Yeah.
What does that bring to you? What does that bring to them? What does that bring to us as a society?
So good. So good. Yeah. The only way to reach every child is to reach each child. And that's what you just summed up there. That is good. That's powerful.
Exactly.
Just imagine right now, people standing up and clapping for you. You got that standing ovation. They're standing in line just to shake your hand, because that's powerful. That is truly what it's all about. So Karen, I know some people will actually go and read the show notes for this, because there are some people that are those overachievers and they like to read show notes and they'll cut and paste your info. But there are a lot more people out there that like to just listen and or watch. How can people reach out to you and connect with you if they're saying, oh, that's a message I want to deliver to my school, my community, and or just learn more about all this Voyager?
So our social media handle for the school is Voyagers NJ, at Voyagers NJ. So you'll find us on all the social media sites there. The school is voyagerscommunityschool.org. So Voyagers with an S, communityschool.org. And the most direct way to get to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, mentored by Karen. And you can find me at director@voyagerscommunityschool.org.
Outstanding.
So many opportunities.
And,
Love to hear from people. I love to hear from people.
and people, you can tell she's got wisdom, she's got knowledge, and she is so approachable. So connect with her, inspire your school, inspire your community, inspire your kids. Truly, destinies are in the balance. So if you care about kids, if you see kids, if you want to hear from kids, connect with Karen and she'll help you make it happen. Karen, thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a crazy busy schedule to just chat with me, inspire me, fill me with hope, and hopefully all listeners as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for the commitment and dedication to helping shift this education paradigm. Thank you.